Ellen Jo is a phenomenal S-rank character, and so today we're just going to be breaking her down, giving a full guide on everything that should be preferred on Ellen Jo when you start to build her, when it comes to her best W engines, best drive disc, best team comps, gacha and free to play, as well as her best Bangboos to put onto the field, as well as her cinemas to explain pretty much everything if you guys want to invest in her and get copies, you know, for all you gacha lovers over there. So my name is Mr. Ocean, and without further ado, let's just get started. So to start off with Ellen's abilities and to kind of break them down a little bit more to know what her kit has value of. And so first we're going to be starting off with her basic attacks. And her basic attacks consist of Sawteeth Trimming and Flash Freeze Trimming. And with Sawteeth Trimming is essentially her basic normal attack that only does physical damage. And upon 3 attacks, on the 3rd attack, you can extend that duration by either holding or pressing down constantly, repeatedly of the button. And so also what would be more beneficial for her would be her Flash Freeze Trimming. And her Flash Freeze Trimming is essentially the same thing as her Sawteeth Trimming. However, it's going to be dealing ice damage. And upon doing this, you are going to be consuming what is called Flash Freeze charges, which is something that's only catered to her because she will gain them over time. And so overall, I think so far you'll have 6 Flash Freezes as her base normal. And once you get more cinemas, she will increase more Flash Freezes over time. Moving on to her dodge ability. Essentially, her dodge ability has kind of an interesting thing, which I find unique to be different than all the other characters in Zenless Zero. So far, her dash ability, she has Roaming Hunt. And Roaming Hunt, you can either hold or double press, being able to activate and allowing her to dash and increasing her movement speed dramatically, which also after this, being able to do the dash attack followed up by the Roaming Hunt, being able to cause a spin slash attack while opening her scissors, causing massive damage. And this will gain upon 1 point of Flash Freeze when doing the Swift Scissors, as well as when you're holding it, you will gain up to 3 Flash Freeze charges, which again, back to what I was talking about with basic attack using the Flash Freeze Trimming, and that's what you're going to be using to cast your ice damage. Going on to her EX, which I feel like is the meat and potatoes of her entire kit along with her ult. But as for her EX skill, she essentially can do Tail Swipe, which does a massive forceful tail whip attack damage, dealing massive ice damage. And upon doing this will gain you 1 Flash Freeze charge, as well as when it comes to her EX special attack, Jarknami, which while following up with her EX attack after the Tail Swipe, she essentially can unleash a powerful force of slashes, dealing again massive damage, gaining another Flash Freeze. So in total, you can gain upon 2 Flash Freezes with her Tail Swipe with a follow-up of her Sharknami. Then we have Ellen's ult, which is Endless Winter. And upon proccing this, she will activate crashing down above and unleashing a storm of powerful strikes with her scissors, dealing massive ice damage. And to just kind of show you the, crazy amount of damage that's being done here. So with her Endless Winter, her damage multiplier is around 2,750%. Massive damage. So when it comes to prioritizing your skills, you would want to go with your EX special, your ult, your basic attacks, and your dodge and your assist can be last. But when it comes to essentially your main 3 skills, you'd want to prioritize those 3 first, because that's what she's going to be doing most of the time. Because with using Flash Freezes, she's going to be constantly using her basic attack. So that's something you're going to need to level up for sure. And along with her EX and her ult, with her EX, you're basically going to be wanting to use that as well, because you're going to be gaining Flash Freezes, and that's something you're going to use quite often. So to increase that damage, why not do it? And with her, essentially with her ultimate, it's going to be shown 2,750 damage is just not a low number. So you're going to be using that quite often when you have the opportunity. So moving on to her W engines. And to start off with, her signature weapon is going to be the best. Deep Sea Visitor is essentially with this W engine's effect will increase ice damage by 25%. And upon hitting with basic attack, your crit rate will increase by 10%, as well as when dealing ice damage, and with a dash attack, the equipper's crit damage is increased by an additional 10%. So in total, you're going to be having 25% ice damage with an increase of 20% in crit rate, which is going to be phenomenally amazing, because it seems like with Ellen's kit, crit rate and crit damage are going to be essentials to her kit. The next weapon that's S rank that would be preferred as well if you do not have a Deep Sea Visitor is going to be Nekomata's Steel Cushion. And with that, essentially essentially the W engine effect Metal Cat Claws is essentially going to increase your physical damage by 20%, and the equipper's damage will be increased by 25% when hitting enemies from behind. And which with Ellen's kit, she is constantly hitting enemies from behind since she will be teleporting with her EX skill and when you do dodge with counterattack. And with that, it's not the best because you are gaining that physical damage bonus. You're not essentially using it a whole lot because you're doing more ice damage than anything. And so with that, the only benefit that you're getting is that 25% from hitting from behind. So it's not terrible. So moving on to her A rank W engines, and I would want to recommend you guys Starlight Engine. As for her W engine effect, Knight's Combo, launching a dodge counter or quick assist increases the equipper's attack by 12% for 12 seconds. And when you refine this all the way, you will get up to 20%. And getting these type of W engines of A rank will be fairly easy because you can do it in the gadget store. And so doing that would be highly recommended as well because she is going to be dodging a lot and her quick assist do prioritize doing ice damage with that. So it will be beneficial for A rank, and that's something I would recommend highly. As for our B rank W engine, I would only recommend Pleniluna. Might be butchering that, but with Pleniluna, the W engine effect is basic attack, dash attacks, and dodge counter damage is increased by 20%. So that's just by far the best W engine for her as a B rank, but I feel like that's a last resort if you can't get a A rank whatsoever, which I would incline it would be hard to because you kind of will be able to gain them over time. So moving on to her disc drives, and as for disc drives, I would highly recommend Woodpecker Electro, Puffer Electro, or Polar Metal. And so starting off with Polar Metal, you're essentially with this 2-piece, you're going to be increasing damage by 10%. And for its 4-piece, you're going to be increasing damage of basic attacks and dash attacks by 20%. And also when any team member inflicts freeze or shatter, this effect will increase by an additional 20%. So when you have the 4-piece for Ellen, you would essentially want to have another ice user in order to proc that additional 20% because you want to increase her ice damage as much as possible. So doing that would probably be beneficial when you have her 4-piece to have a second ice user. Along with Puffer Electro, its 2-piece will increase pen ratio by 8%. And for its 4-piece, the ultimate damage will increase by 20%, and landing an ultimate will increase the user's attack by 15%. This is also very beneficial because let alone you're having pen ratio, which you're kind of windering their defense a little bit more since their defense is kind of not mattering as much. And with her ultimate being increased by 20% is a huge amount. And also being able to gain that extra attack is also beneficial for her. And so when it comes to Woodpecker Electro, you're increasing your crit rate by 8% on a 2-piece. And for 4-piece, you're landing a critical hit on an enemy with basic attack, dodge counter, and EX special attack. Increases the equipper's attack by 9% for 6 seconds. Buffs duration for different skills are calculated separately. And so this is a very good one. I would highly recommend this as possibly a 2-piece. For a 4-piece, I would not recommend as much. For preferably, I would want you guys to prioritize using Polar Metal as your 4-piece, and you can either swap between Puffer Electro or Woodpecker Electro depending on which stat you're lacking in more. So when speaking of stats, when it comes to prioritizing your substats, you want to prioritize in finding crit rate, crit damage, attack percentage, and pen ratio. And so when it comes to disc 1, 2, and 3, they're essentially going to be staying the same as HP, flat attack, and flat defense. So for disc 4, you want to prioritize having either crit rate or crit damage depending on your ratio. You want to have a good ratio of crit rate, crit damage. And for disc 5, you most definitely want to have ice damage. And for disc 6, you want to prioritize attack. And so essentially you'd want to focus on these stats more. When it comes to substats, you probably want to prioritize ranking wise. You want pen ratio, crit rate, crit damage, and attack, just so hopefully you have a good ratio. So when it comes to Ellen's best team consists of Ellen, Lycan, and Sukaku. Since they're all ice users, they will all have their active passives. And for Lycan, he's great for stunning enemies. And for Sukaku is going to be great for drawing in those enemies for Ellen to attack all of them consistently, collectively together. And if you don't have Lycan, you can have an alternative for free to play. You can have Anby. Anby is a great stun character. Even though she's Electro, she is not going to have her passive active, but it's beneficial because it's a good alternative and Ellen is still going to have her passive since Sukaku is going to be on the team roster for that. So when it comes to Bangboos, it would be prioritized to have the Butler and Shark Boo. For the Butler, it's going to be beneficial, but you need to have 2 Victoria Housekeeping characters on your team since it will be an active skill of generating 20 energy. And as for Shark Boo is essentially going to be inflicting 100% more anomaly buildup in your attacks, which will consist of ice, ice, so you're going to be doing a lot of shatter and a lot of freeze more. And finally, I kind of wanted to talk about cinemas last because I know they add beneficials to the character, and I know with this video, if you guys are interested on investing her more and getting more copies, or if you guys are fine with her being at just, you know, Cinema 0. And so to start off with, I am going to be skipping over Cinema 3 and Cinema 5 because they're essentially just going to increase your, you know, base attack, dodge, assist, special attacks, and your ults just by 2, so it'll just be add additional of 4 in total. So for the first one, Glacier Omen. Upon hitting an enemy with a swift scissor strike during dash, Arctic Ambush, the obtained flash freeze charges are increased to 3. So you gain an additional 3 flash charges, and for each flash freeze charge consumed, Ellen's crit rate is increased by 2% for 15 seconds, stacking up to 6 times, and the duration for each stack is calculated separately. So it's also a benefit because now your flash freeze has an additional benefit of increasing your crit rate by 2%, and having that 6 stack in order to increase it by 12% is very good and very beneficial because you are going to be using your flash freezes quite often by using your basic attacks. And moving on to Cinema 2, Arctic Ocean Predator, the third hit of basic attack flash freeze trimming can directly follow up with an EX special attack, Sharknami. And so when you're casting this EX special, the flash freeze charge will increase its current attacker's crit damage by 20%, and it can stack up to 60%. So that's very beneficial as well. Hopefully when you have enough crit rate, that, you know, ratio doesn't drastically change when you have up to that 60%. And so with Cinema 4, whenever a squad member freezes or stuns an enemy, Ellen gains 6 flash freeze charges and a quick charge effect. She can also recover 4 energy, and this energy recovery can only trigger once per 10 seconds. And that's really beneficial as well. And like I said earlier, with your team comp, if you have Anby or if you have Lycan, for them to stun is going to be beneficial because right after, Ellen is going to have her flash freezes in order to proc damage. And that's very beneficial for her. Just be aware of that in rotation to make sure to have it, you know, past 10 seconds so you can keep having, you know, that proc constantly. And lastly, as for Cinema 6, the feast begins. When Ellen uses her EX skill or chain attack or gains quick charge, her penetration ratio will be increased by 20% for 6 seconds. And she also gains 1 stack of the feast begins and up to a maximum of 3 stacks. And with the third stack of the feast begins, using a charged scissor strike during the attack or Arctic ambush consumes all the stacks and increases the damage of the current attacker by 250%. So not, you know, only that she's increasing her pen ratio, which is greatly helpful for diminishing damage against higher defensive enemies, and also being able to stack that is by far amazing. And for her to use her scissor strike just to cast that as 250 extra damage, and from what I believe, it's adding 250 damage to the current multiplier of her Arctic ambush. So that's everything when it comes to Ellen's full build and her full team comp and guide. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and if you guys want any other characters you guys would like for me to cover, make sure to leave it down in the comments down below, or I'll be making another post of which other next character I'm going to be doing next, so you guys can vote down there whenever the post comes into the community chat. And also, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, comment down below, and also make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification because it will notify you when I post my new video or whenever I make a new post on anything here zenlesszonezero related. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and you guys have a wonderful day.